You have probably seen the number. It went around the world in the summer of 2024, flashing across weather apps and news tickers. A figure so high it looked like a typo. Somewhere above 60 degrees Celsius. In the low 60s. A number that, if it were the actual air temperature, would be the hottest reading ever recorded anywhere on the surface of the Earth, by a margin of several degrees. And here is the first thing you need to know, because it is the whole story. The thermometer did not read 63. On the day those headlines ran, the 17th of July 2024, the actual air temperature in Dubai was 43 degrees Celsius. Hot, yes. Dangerous, yes. But 43 is a number Dubai sees every summer. It is not a record. It is not history. The 60-something figure was not what the air measured. It was what the air did to a human body. It was the feels-like temperature. And the gap between those two numbers, between the 43 the instrument recorded and the 62 it felt like on human skin, is not a rounding error or a bit of media exaggeration. That gap is the crisis. That gap is the new territory. And almost nobody watching those headlines understood what they were actually looking at. So let us take it apart, because once you see what is inside that number, you cannot unsee it, and it changes how you understand every hot place on the planet. Start with the two different things a temperature can measure. When a weather station says it is 43 degrees, it is telling you one specific fact: how hot the air is. That is the dry bulb temperature, the raw reading off a thermometer in the shade. It is an honest number, but it is an incomplete one, because it does not tell you what that heat will actually do to a person standing in it. And what heat does to a person depends enormously on a second factor the thermometer ignores completely. Humidity, they feels like temperature, the heat index, is the attempt to combine those two into a single honest figure. It answers a different and far more important question. Not how hot is the air, but how hot will this feel to a body trying to survive in it? And in Dubai, in July of 2024, the answer to that question climbed to 62 degrees Celsius, according to US-based weather services. 143 degrees Fahrenheit, reported not once as a freak spike, but repeatedly. Financial news outlets tracking the region noted that the feels-like figure pushed past 60 degrees on several separate days that summer. 43 in the air, 62 on the body. To understand why those numbers are so far apart, you have to understand the one tool your body has for surviving heat, and the one thing that switches it off. Your body holds itself at about 37 degrees Celsius, and it will fight ferociously to stay there. On a hot day, it has several ways to shed heat, but nearly all of them stop working once the air around you climbs above your own skin temperature, which sits around 35 degrees. Above that line, the air is no longer colder than you. It cannot pull heat away. It starts pushing heat into you instead. At that point, your body has exactly one method left. Sweat, you perspire. The sweat evaporates off your skin, and evaporation carries heat away with it. It is a genuinely powerful cooling system. It is also completely dependent on one condition. The air has to be dry enough to accept the moisture. Sweat only cools you when it evaporates. If it just sits on your skin, it does nothing. And that is the difference between a dry desert and Dubai. In Phoenix, or in the deep Sahara, the air is bone dry. 43 degrees there is brutal, but your sweat flashes off your skin almost instantly. And that evaporation buys your body a huge amount of cooling. The thermometer says 43, but your body, hard at work evaporating sweat, experiences something far more survivable. Dubai does not get that mercy. Dubai sits on the edge of the Persian Gulf, a shallow enclosed sea of warm water, and under the summer sun that water evaporates into the coastal air and loads it with moisture. So the air over Dubai in July is both scorchingly hot and thick with humidity, and when the air is already saturated, your sweat has nowhere to go. It beads. It runs. It does not evaporate, and so it does not cool you. Your one remaining cooling system is switched off at the exact moment you need it most. That is what the 62-degree feels like number is really saying. It is saying that in that heat and that humidity, your body cannot cool itself the way it could at 43 degrees in a dry climate. Physiologically, you are not experiencing a hot day. You are experiencing something closer to 60 degrees because your defenses have been disabled. The thermometer is telling the truth about the air. It is lying about the danger. And there is a hard scientific ceiling to all of this. A line past which the feels like conversation stops being about comfort and becomes about survival. In 2015, two scientists admit, Fatih El-Tahir, a professor of civil and environmental engineering, and his colleague Jeremy Powell, published a study in the journal Nature Climate Change that identified that line precisely. It is measured on a scale called the wet bulb temperature, which is essentially the temperature a thermometer reaches when it is wrapped in a wet cloth, the coolest that evaporation alone can get you. And they identified a threshold on that scale, 35 degrees wet bulb. Above 35 degrees wet bulb, a healthy human being sitting in the shade with unlimited water and a fan cannot survive more than a few hours. Not will suffer, cannot survive. Because at that point, even perfect, unlimited sweating is no longer enough to shed the heat the body is taking on, and the core temperature simply rises until the person dies. El-Tahir noted that this threshold had, as far as anyone knew, never been reliably recorded anywhere on the planet. For most of history, wet bulb readings almost never pushed past 31. And when Powell and El-Tahir ran their climate models forward to find the first place on Earth expected to cross that fatal line, the answer was not the Sahara and not Death Valley. It was the coastline of the Persian Gulf, Doha, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. This is why the 62-degree feels like reading is not just a dramatic headline. It is a waypoint. It is the everyday, survivable for now face of the exact same force that the models say will eventually make this coastline the first on Earth where the outdoor air can kill a healthy person in the shade. The proof that we are moving toward that line is not theoretical. In that same 2015 summer, across the Gulf at Bandar Mashar in Iran, the wet bulb temperature reached 34.6 degrees, a fraction below the threshold that is not supposed to be reachable, on the shore of the same sea. Now here's the part of the story that gets left out of almost every glossy account of Dubai, and it is the part that matters most. Because a feels like temperature is not an abstraction, it lands on specific human bodies, and it does not land evenly. Picture the two Dubai that exist inside that 62-degree afternoon. There is the Dubai of the brochure. Air-conditioned apartment, air-conditioned car, air-conditioned mall the size of a town, an indoor ski slope kept below freezing while the outside pushes past 40. In that Dubai, the 62-degree feels like it's something you glance at on your phone before stepping from one cooled box into another. You never actually stand in it. Cooling in this city is not a luxury. It is so fundamental that air conditioning accounts for close to half of all the electricity Dubai consumes, and can run to 80% of a single building's power demand. The entire city is engineered so that a large part of its population never has to feel the real number. And then there is the other Dubai, the one that built the first one and keeps it running. This is a city constructed, physically, by an enormous workforce of migrant laborers, and it is kept running by delivery riders, security guards, road crews, and ground staff whose entire job is to be outside. For them, the 62-degree afternoon is not a number on a screen. It is the air they are working in. They are the people standing in the exact conditions that the feels like figure describes, doing physical labor, in humidity that has switched off their body's ability to cool itself. The government is not blind to this. The way enforces a midday break rule every summer, banning outdoor work during the hottest part of the day, roughly the middle hours of the afternoon, from the middle of June to the middle of September. It is a genuine protection, and it saves lives, but it has edges. A delivery rider paid per drop is not covered the way a construction crew is. The hours just outside the ban are still lethal. And the humidity that drives the feels like number does not observe a schedule. So picture one of them. A delivery rider on a motorbike at 2 in the afternoon in late July, moving through a city that is technically pausing, but never actually stops ordering lunch. The air temperature is 43. On his body, inside his helmet and jacket, it is 62. He is sweating heavily, and none of it is evaporating, so none of it is cooling him, and the only real relief on his entire route is the 30 seconds of cold air that spills out of each lobby as the automatic doors open to take the bag from his hands. Then the doors close. The cold stays inside with the people who ordered. And he is back in the 62 degrees that the residents upstairs will never once feel. That is who it feels like temperature is actually about. Not the number, the person standing inside it. And this is where the phrase in the title, Dangerous New Territory, becomes literal rather than dramatic. Because the story is not just about one hot afternoon in 2024. It is about a trend that is accelerating in a way the region has never seen. Look at what happened the very next year. In May of 2025, before summer had even officially begun, the Way recorded a temperature of 51.6 degrees Celsius in the Swaihan area near Al Ain. That was the hottest May temperature ever recorded in the country since comprehensive tracking began in 2003, beating the previous May record of 50.2. To put that in perspective, the country's all-time high across any month is around 52 degrees. In May, the Uwe came within a fraction of a degree of its hottest temperature ever recorded in any month of any year. That is the new territory. Not simply that the peaks are getting higher, though they are. It is that the extreme heat is arriving earlier, stretching the dangerous season longer, and pairing with the Gulf's humidity to push the feels like number into ranges that used to belong only to the deepest weeks of July. The National Center of Meteorology noted that temperatures were running more than 1.5 degrees above their historical norms. The average May high had climbed past its long-term baseline. The season is not just hotter, it is longer, and it is starting sooner. And because so much of the danger lives in the humidity rather than the raw air temperature, the official record books actually understate what is happening. A city can fail to break its all-time air temperature record and still be growing steadily more lethal. Because the thing that kills, the combination of heat and moisture that the feels like number captures, is climbing even when the dry thermometer reading is not. The danger is hiding in the gap between the two numbers, and that gap is exactly the thing the record books do not track. Which brings the whole story back to where it started, to that shocking figure in the headlines and the quieter, more honest number underneath it. When you see that Dubai hit 60-something degrees, the instinct is to picture a thermometer glowing with an impossible reading. But that is not what happened, and the truth is more unsettling than the myth. The air did not break a world record that day. The air was 43. What reached into the 60s was the toll that heat took on a human body once the Gulf's humidity stripped away its ability to cool itself. And that toll is rising faster than the air temperature is, arriving earlier in the year, and bending toward a wet bulb line that scientists have already named as the first place on Earth the human body will not be able to cross. So think about the edge of the city on an afternoon like that. Out past the cooled towers and the frozen ski slope, on a road shimmering with heat, a delivery rider checks the screen mounted on his handlebars before the next drop. The little weather icon in the corner shows the temperature, not the honest, incomplete 43 that the airport recorded. The other number, the one that knows about the humidity, the one that knows what the next hour is going to cost him. It reads 62. It is climbing. And the people in the tower above him, in their cooled and frozen and perfectly comfortable rooms, will look at the same city on the same afternoon and never feel a single degree of it. That is the new territory. Not the record that was broken,